The sound of bones cracking echoed through the thick, humid air. Claws tightened, fangs bared, and the alien boy screamed, a sound swallowed by the jungle of Zarkey, where screams were just part of the natural order. The predator had him. Its jaw, laced with 1,000 microscopic serrations, clamped around the child's shoulder with calculated pressure, enough to maim, not kill. It liked its prey to squirm. The boy, barely past hatchling age, was dragged across the soil, leaving behind streaks of blood and whimpers of breath too weak to cry for help anymore. High above, orbiting quietly in the upper atmosphere, a human scout vessel skimmed the edge of sensor range. Its engines pulsed with low blue hums, indifferent to the terror below, until something flickered. The moon of Zarkey was a place of beauty layered in horror. Everything shimmered, the trees, the ground, even the mist that hung low like a whisper. It was beautiful because it was deadly. Bioluminescent vines pulsed with color as if breathing. Spore clouds drifted in organized patterns like schools of fish. And yet beneath that beauty lay a hunting ground, a world where the apex predator had remained unbeaten for millennia. The Kareth, born of silence, evolved to be unseen, with eyes that could see heartbeats and patience that could outlast suns. The alien boy had wandered too far from his siblings. Just minutes before, he'd been laughing, his tentacle fingers flailing as he danced along the ridge of a moss-covered hill. His skin, a soft teal with streaks of iridescence, caught the moonlight like a pearl rolling through grass. He had promised not to stray. He had sworn to stay within the sound of their voices. But curiosity was cruel, and the jungle called. He didn't see the Kareth until it moved, and by then it was too late. It had studied him from the shadows. Every footstep, every breath. Its camouflage shimmered and changed with the environment, phasing between greens and golds, branches and rock. The boy had bent down to pick a glowing insect when the world went dark. The weight hit him like a collapsing tree. He screamed. It bit. Now. Paralyzed by venom and sheer terror. He could only blink through tears as the Kareth dragged him toward a narrow ravine filled with acidic vines. The predator knew how to kill slowly. It knew how to savor the last beats of its prey's fading heart. But above, something changed. Inside the human scout vessel, a low chime rang once. Not enough to sound alarms, but enough to draw attention. Greyhawk glanced at the console. Readouts flashed. Unexplained EM fluctuation. Biological distress. Faint signals. He narrowed his eyes. Something alive down there was panicking. Hard. Not local fauna. Something different. Something sentient. A blink of warning passed on screen. Local predator activity detected. No further data. Risk level, critical. He leaned forward, fingers tightening on the edge of the console. Another kid, he muttered. It was always kids. Every time he thought he could patrol a sector without pulling another broken body out of dirt, the galaxy proved him wrong. He rerouted power to the long-range biosign scanner. The silhouette appeared, small, humanoid, surrounded by a shifting mass far too large and too cold. A predator. Close proximity. The scanner flared red, then dimmed. Contact severed. The signal was fading. Greyhawk reached for the harness. No orders. No payment. No backup. Just instinct. Back on the moon, the Kareth stopped. It raised its snout, inhaling the change in the air. The tremor of metal. The vibration of human tech. It dropped the boy, snarling, sniffing. It knew that sound. It had heard it before. The last time it did, its nest was turned to ash. Its mate never returned. The humans had come then, not with fire, but with silence and resolve. It thought the jungle had finally reclaimed itself. It was wrong. The boy gasped, his lungs constricting under the weight of venom. He could no longer feel his legs. His vision blurred the edges, pulsing to the rhythm of his faltering heart. In his mind, the voice of his oldest sibling echoed. If you're ever lost, climb. Signal the sky. The stars will see you. But he couldn't climb. Not anymore. The predator paced now, tail swaying. It was clever. It didn't flee. It circled the child again, dragging it alone against bark, leaving a sulfurous mark. It wanted to finish this before the human arrived, before it lost its prize. It reared back, unhinging its jaws. a tremor. A sonic boom cracked above the tree canopy, a distortion of clouds spiraling outward. Greyhawk's vessel entered atmosphere. The Kareth froze. Its pupils contracted. Its muscles coiled. It had seconds, and so did the boy. Blood dripped from the child's shoulder. He tried to speak. No words came, but his eyes, glassy and flickering, turned toward the sky. A faint hum built in the air. Leaves rustled not from wind, but from displacement. Something was coming down, fast. In the scout ship, Greyhawk powered systems to full. ETA. 30 seconds, he said. Not anyone, just to fill the silence. His hand hovered above the manual override for the harpoon system. The usual rules didn't apply here. He wouldn't wait for confirmation. He knew what these things did to children. He'd buried too many. Zark's jungle roared in defiance as the Kareth stepped forward, jaws opening wide. Its fangs gleamed under the shimmer of the canopy's reflected light. The boy closed his eyes. But something changed. A high-pitched whine, sharp and sudden, cut through the jungle's natural rhythm. The Kareth hissed. Light touched down, bright, focused blue-white. A shadow fell from the sky. The boy opened his eyes. For a moment, just one, he saw it, a figure outlined in pale flame. The jungle itself seemed to draw back. No face, just the dark silhouette of a being who came not to hunt, but to protect. And then the roar of thrusters drowned everything. A human had arrived, and Zarke would remember what that meant. The cabin shook as atmospheric friction painted fire across the scout ship's hull. Inside, Greyhawk remained steady, locked into his harness, eyes fixed on the descent vector. The jungle loomed below like a living snare. Every sensor screamed about interference. Pollen storms, magnetic anomalies, proximity to predatory life forms. He muted the warnings. He already knew it was a death trap. He wasn't here to assess risk. He was here because something screamed for help, and no one else would answer. As the ship pierced a lower cloud layer, the scanner flickered again. The boy's vitals were faint. Steady pulse, erratic breathing. No comms link, no beacon. Just raw life force leaking into the soil. Greyhawk's jaw tightened. He'd seen this before. The same red spikes. The same sudden cutoffs. Children on frontier colonies ambushed before they even knew what hunger was. He couldn't stop them all, but he was damn sure going to stop this one. The boy was still alive, but he wouldn't be for long. Down in the underbrush, the Kareth crept low, every sinew rippling beneath its shifting hide. It was no longer rushing. The ship had changed the equation, but not the outcome. It would adapt. It always did. It moved silently, recalculating the kill. A new predator had entered the arena, but the Kareth had killed many things, even ones that came from stars. The boy twitched, trying to crawl. Blood matted his back, and every motion made his vision tilt. His small hand reached out, fingers brushing a stone, then falling limp. A single word formed in his throat, his sibling's name. No one heard it, not even the predator, but the human did. Greyhawk's boots locked to the deck as the ship lurched into hover mode. Targeting sensors finally got a partial lock. The predator's heat signature was unstable. Whatever cloaking biofilm it used reflected thermal scans erratically, but the harpoon system pinged proximity. He marked the zone, 30 meters from the clearing's edge. Too far for precision, too close for safety. The ship couldn't fire without risking the child. He'd have to do it the old way. He yanked the magnetic rifle from the wall. Too slow. He dropped it. Harpoon. Better. Compact, wired, adjustable torque. He popped open the belly panel and rewired the primary coil to divert power straight from the reactor conduit. It would only fire once before melting, but once was all he needed. The gravity tether was the hard part. He ripped 2 anchor clamps from a hull brace, wired them to his belt, then knotted the synthetic cable into the spool core. It wasn't clean. It wasn't safe. But it would hold. He slapped the final override, and the cargo bay opened with a mechanical hiss. Heat poured in like a physical thing. Vines snapped in the wash of the thrusters. Trees shivered. Greyhawk stepped to the edge, the jungle stretching out before him like an open wound. He saw the boy. Barely. He saw the shimmer next to him. Predator. His boots magnetized. One step, then another, and he dropped. The Karatha's head snapped up. The air screamed with distortion. It knew that noise. Plasma boots. Stabilizer jets. Human descent. It bared its teeth and slid into the undergrowth, vanishing in a blink. Greyhawk hit the ground hard, knees flexing to absorb the impact. No time to orient. He sprinted. The vines tried to grab him. Thorns sliced the suit. Sensors failed. His helmet HUD glitched. He ripped it off. He could see the child now. Closer, but too far to reach before the thing struck again. He pulled the harpoon, but his hands were already shaking. The predator's outline flickered to his left. Too late. Greyhawk spun and fired. The harpoon sailed through the trees, trailing a crackling wire. It caught the predator's flank, piercing chitin and muscle. The Karat screamed, but the tether snapped. The recoil fried the coil. Greyhawk fell back, shoulder hitting a root. Sparks burned across his chest. He cursed, rolled, drew the secondary harpoon. Manual coil. No guidance. No tether. Just strength. The Karat staggered but didn't fall. It turned, blood leaking from the side of its face. It dropped to all fours and charged. Greyhawk didn't run. He ducked low and threw the harpoon with all the force left in his frame. It missed. The predator slammed into him. They crashed into the dirt, rolling, limbs tangling. The Karat snapped, but Greyhawk rammed his elbow into its throat. It bit down on his shoulder plate. Metal screamed. Pain lit his side. He jammed a fist into its eye. It reared back. He grabbed the backup tether, looped it around its neck, and slammed the anchor into ground. Gravity lock engaged. The Karat twisted, howling. It pulled against the tether. The cable held. Greyhawk crawled to the boy, dragging himself over roots and blood. He didn't think about the pain. He didn't look back. He reached the child, wrapped an arm around his tiny body, and pulled him close. The kid whimpered, still breathing. Barely. He hit the comm. 2 life forms. Emergency evac. The ship's AI responded in monotone. Landing protocol inhibited by terrain obstruction. Greyhawk looked up. The trees were too dense. He tapped the secondary flare and fired it into the air. The ship scanned the flare, realigned, and blew a clearing open with a short-range burst. Branches evaporated. The clearing widened. Light fell like a spotlight. The predator roared. It had broken free. Greyhawk didn't think. He threw the harpoon again, one last desperate arc. It struck the Karat in the throat. The tether went live. The anchor dragged it back. Greyhawk stood, boy in arms, and ran. Behind him, the predator thrashed. It pulled the cable free. It stumbled forward. The scout ship dropped low. The ramp opened. Greyhawk leapt. He didn't wait to see if the Karat followed. The ramp closed. The ship ascended. The jungle fell silent again, but it had changed. The boy lay safe in the human's arms. And the predator, for the first time in his life, had failed to kill because a human had shown up. The silence inside the ship was thick, sterile humming, filled with the subtle whine of stabilizers and the click-click of cooling metal. Greyhawk didn't speak. He didn't look away from the boy cradled in his arms, even as a medbot scanned, prodded, and injected counter-serums into the child's blood. The alien boy trembled violently, his translucent eyelids fluttering with shallow, uneven breaths. Venom from the Karatha's bite still rippled through his system like static, but he was alive. That was all that mattered. His small chest rose and fell with effort, the soft chime of the medical monitor, sinking to each heartbeat, weak but steady. Greyhawk sat beside the gurney, bloodied armor half-stripped, shoulder dark with dried gore that wasn't his. His eyes were distant, locked on the boy's face, not out of sentiment, but out of memory. He'd seen that same face too many times on too many different species. Different eyes, different skin, same terror, same helplessness, and always the same look when they realized someone came for them, that it wasn't over. He reached forward and gently adjusted the thermal wrap around the child's narrow frame. The boy twitched and whimpered, one of his tentacle fingers curling around Greyhawk's wrist with unconscious desperation. "You're all right," Greyhawk muttered, voice low, gravel thick. Stay with me, kid. The ship adjusted course. A star map flickered across the forward console, highlighting a nearby colonial outpost with full med facilities. ETA, 14 minutes. Not fast enough for comfort, just fast enough to count. The AI's voice cut through the quiet. Subject stabilized. Prognosis positive, pending toxin clearance. Greyhawk leaned back slightly. He didn't exhale in relief. He didn't know how to anymore. Instead, he stood. The ship hummed beneath his boots as he stepped into the storage alcove and pulled out the cleaning solvents. His armor had to be repaired. The bite mark on his shoulder plate had cut straight through to the underlayers. It was luck more than material that his shoulder wasn't missing. He popped the panel off, scraped away the residue, and reattached the nano-weave padding. Every motion mechanical, efficient, rehearsed. He'd done this 100 times. 100 different moons. 100 different kids. But he hadn't always been like this. Long ago, before the galaxy called him savior, before he became a legend whispered on frontier worlds, Greyhawk had been something else. A soldier, yes, but more than that, a protector of protocols, of rules, of orders, until one mission broke him. A rescue call from a colony out on the edge. No strategic value, no military investment, just families trying to make a life. When they were attacked, command dismissed it as containable loss. Greyhawk disobeyed. Alone, unauthorized, he found 3 survivors. All children. He buried 32 others. That day, the war ended for him. But the mission didn't. Since then, he didn't follow orders. He followed signals. Like the one that led him to this boy. The ship rocked slightly, passing through gravitational turbulence. The boy stirred, blinking once. Greyhawk returned instantly, kneeling beside the gurney again. The boy's mouth opened, a faint sound emerging, guttural, musical, his species language. It didn't translate, but it didn't have to. The gratitude in his eyes said enough. Greyhawk nodded once. He reached for a translation module and tapped it against the boy's chest. The AI would process the phonetic patterns. It would take time, but the kid would eventually have a voice again. Rest, Greyhawk said quietly. You're safe now. But not everyone would be. The Kareth wasn't dead. Greyhawk knew it. The second tether shot had hit its throat, but not the neural node. The harpoon had pierced muscle, not brain. And creatures like that didn't stop because of pain. They stopped because they were dead, or because they learned to fear something more dangerous. That was the thing about predators. They were relentless until they weren't. Until someone reminded them that the top of the food chain wasn't fixed. He pulled up the bioscan logs from earlier. Fragmented heat signatures. Electromagnetic traces. Unstable readings. All of it pointed to one fact. This Kareth wasn't just any Kareth. It was adapting. Faster than normal. The Kareth species had been a known threat for centuries, but never intelligent. Cunning, yes. Coordinated in packs. Sometimes. But this one had tracked, isolated, and stalked a sentient child. Despite artificial pheromone deterrents his people had placed around their village borders. It had bypassed the scents, circled the traps. It didn't attack out of hunger. It attacked to test something. Greyhawk frowned, rubbing a hand over his face. This wasn't just a rescue anymore. It was a warning. A species evolving under the radar. One that had survived first contact with humans before and learned from it. One that had tasted defeat and returned with purpose. He walked back to the comm station. Patch me to Central Reach Authority, he said. The AI paused. No diplomatic clearance. Override. Emergency code GRH 731. Voice been confirmed. A hollow tone echoed through the cabin. Then a connection opened. This is independent responder Greyhawk, he said without preamble. I'm transmitting an encrypted data package containing logs from Zarkay. Predator activity. Confirmed intelligent behavior. Aggressive targeting of sentient juveniles. I need containment protocols initiated. The line crackled. A voice responded, mechanical, slow. Your designation is unauthorized for interspecies threat classification. I'm not asking for permission, Greyhawk said. I'm giving you a chance to respond before it escalates. Silence. Then the transmission cut. He didn't care. He had done what he needed to. The rest would fall into place. Or it wouldn't. Greyhawk returned to the boy, whose breathing had stabilized further. Color was returning to his skin. A flicker of light shimmered across his chest, a bioresponse common to his people. It meant safety, recognition, belonging. The human watched for a moment, then lowered himself beside the gurney once more. Outside the ship, stars streamed past. Clouds parted. The jungle disappeared behind them. But Greyhawk's mind stayed there. The Kareth had learned something new today. So had the jungle. And next time, when the predator returned, it would remember one thing above all else. The human who showed up and didn't run. The outpost loomed ahead, a dull metal spire against the pale blue horizon, wrapped in defensive shielding and quiet urgency. The ship's approach was met with raised turrets, but Greyhawk didn't flinch. The system recognized his transponder before the gunners did. Seconds later, clearance codes lit green. The hangar bay opened. The scout ship touched down hard, hissing as it settled on the platform. He didn't wait for the pressure to equalize. The moment the ramp dropped, Greyhawk moved, the boy in his arms wrapped tight in thermal mesh. Medical drones swarmed the ramp. Uniforms rushed in behind them. Alien and human personnel alike. Medics armed with scanners and antiseptics. Life form is stable. Greyhawk snapped. Kareth toxin exposure. Multiple lacerations, puncture trauma, and neural shock. Start detox immediately. The lead medic nodded. Understood. Will. Greyhawk didn't hand the boy over. Not yet. Secure wing. No windows. Only Tier 1 access. No lab tags. No quarantine delay. He gets treated now. The medic blinked, caught off guard. Sir, that's... Greyhawk's eyes cut him down. Now... The medic didn't argue again. Once the boy disappeared behind sterile doors, Greyhawk leaned against the wall and let the weight leave him. Just for a second, his shoulder burned. His ribs ached. But pain was old news. What mattered now was a report. The command office was a sterile box with no warmth, no soul, and exactly the kind of place Greyhawk hated. But he sat there anyway, field uniform crusted with blood and jungle rot, delivering the full account. He showed them the sensor data, the environmental readings, the encounter logs. He broke down the Kareth's tactics, showed the footage of it hesitating, learning, reacting. Most in the room remained quiet. Some scoffed. One finally spoke. You're suggesting it was intelligent? No, Greyhawk said. I'm saying it's learning to be. That changed the room's temperature. Slightly. The military liaison, an older Terran officer with silver streaks in his uniform, folded his arms. So what's your recommendation? Deploy fire teams to every forest in neutral space? This isn't scalable. Greyhawk didn't blink. You don't need fire teams. You need to tell every colony that the game has changed, that the Kareth aren't beasts anymore. They're watchers, testers. The next time they strike, it won't be for meat. It'll be to see how far they can go. A pause. Tension thick in the air. Someone exhaled. And if we ignore this, Greyhawk stood, then you'll bury more children. He didn't wait for permission to leave. He walked out of the room, every step echoing against metal and silence. Behind him, they talked in circles, protocols, politics, budget chains. But it was already too late for that kind of thinking. The jungle didn't care about reports, and predators didn't file for diplomatic channels. He returned to the med wing. The boy was conscious now, weak but awake, eyes fluttering open, one hand twitching to the side of the bed. A nurse adjusted the floor as Greyhawk stepped in, silent as a ghost. The kid's head turned slowly. Recognition bloomed. That instinctive response, relief. Then something else. No words passed between them, but the boy reached out, and Greyhawk, for the first time in a long time, let himself sit beside the bed, not just to guard, but to be present. He stayed there until the boy fell asleep again. Later, when the staff tried to move him, he didn't budge, and they stopped trying, because stories had already started. The The hangar crew whispered first, about the harpoon that tore through a jungle beast, about the scarred soldier who carried a half-dead alien child out of fire and teeth and shadow. The story spread across the station, then through the supply chain, then off-world. They didn't know his name. They didn't need to. They just called him what they always did, the human who shows up. Because on the edge of known space, where monsters still hunted beneath moonlight and progress forgot to build fences, that name mattered more than medals. It meant someone might come, when no one else would. Weeks later, when the child was healthy enough to speak, a delegation arrived from his homeworld. His mother, barely holding herself together, fell to her knees when she saw him. The child pointed at Greyhawk. The translation module, finely tuned to his dialect, chirped softly. He didn't run. That was all, but it was enough. Greyhawk didn't stay for ceremony, or thanks, or reward. He left that same night. His ship slipped through the sky like smoke. Quiet, uncelebrated. But far below, in that jungle, the Kareth moved through the undergrowth slower than before. It still hunted, still stalked. But now it looked up when it heard the sound of engines in the clouds. Because for the first time in its life, it knew fear, not of weapons, not of fleets, but of the one thing it couldn't adapt to. A human who showed up, and didn't stop, and never would,